Hello and welcome to everyone, and this is the final installment of the MIC training series for CNAP. I'm Sam Cunningham, the MIC program manager, and today we're going to talk about the internal control assessments, talk a little bit about the reportable conditions, and we're going to wrap it up with risk assessments, risk and opportunity assessments, statements of assurance, and certification statement. So a quick recap on the last presentation that we made was on checklists and quarterly spot checks. The checklist that you see here on the screen will be submitted by the SMEs once completed for their respective AUs or sub-AUs, ensuring that the comments block here has a supporting narrative that is sufficient in nature to provide evidence to the MIC coordinators that the work was conducted, that there's actually testing done. The MIC coordinators will take these checklists and take a look to ensure the adequacy of the work, and then they will submit a quarterly spot check memo via the SharePoint portal. So once all of the checklists are done, the SMEs will take a look at assessing the internal controls over their particular AUs or sub-AUs. So they might have a checklist that has 100 questions on it, but the question that they need to ask themselves is, what's the checklist trying to accomplish? And so I usually break it down to just a couple of different areas. Is it trying to prevent or ensure that something occurs, or is it trying to detect something? So I've taken one of the internal control assessments here and added two elements to it on the travel card. One is under the process area, and I put the prevention of unauthorized travel card usage, and then the second one is the detection of unauthorized travel card use. And then you have things such as the risk, which is the unauthorized charges to government, the control that's in place. For the sake of argument, we'll say that AO suspends all cardholders' cards until they're in a travel status. And then what's the objective of the testing of the control? The testing of the control is to ensure that the cards in non-travel status are actually suspended. And then the description of design test, we're going to review reports of active cards and employees in a travel status. And for this one, we said that the control design was effective, that we actually are looking at the right things. And then the description of control operation test, compare the active cards report to the travel status reports. We say that the test is correct and that we're looking at the right reports to determine whether or not the control is effective. So that's the purpose of the internal control assessment. At the end of that, we're determining whether or not the new control for the upcoming year is low, medium, or high, meaning that if it's, in this case, we believe that the control is low and that it will prevent or detect any hazards or misstatements that might occur, any material misstatements that might occur, which is the purpose of the control assessment. So let's say that we go through the internal control assessment and we think that there are some errors. We think that there are some things that we have some problems in our control environment. The biggest thing you should look at is determining whether or not that is material. And so material meaning that is it a threat to the mission, resources, or image? And it's this is a subjective area, and so the command needs to take a look at what they feel is material to mission, resources, or image. If they determine that it is material to this, then we determine what type of weakness it is that we have in our control system. So a material weakness is something that is serious enough to report up to the next level. Maybe it's something that we can't control or have no control over, like staffing levels, or it can be a complete failure of a control. The control they have in place has failed, or failure is imminent, or there are just no controls in place, or the controls in place are not compliant with a regulation. And then a reportable condition is just a control deficiency or some combination of deficiencies that might affect the mission, but they're not really serious enough to be material. They might be something that's intermittent, and so if it is something that's that in that area, it's a reportable condition vice the material. And then the last one is an item to be revisited, something that's brought to the attention of the command, the MIC coordinator, that is insufficient evidence as to whether or not it's a material weakness yet, but something that you take a look at throughout the year, and you'll revisit that during the next cycle. So you completed the internal control assessments, and you determined whether or not there is anything that's material or not that you can report as a MIC coordinator on your statement of insurance. And now we want to take a look at risk assessments. So the risk assessments, using that same example, we went ahead and put the process on here: prevention of unauthorized travel use and the detection, and then the description of the risk and the weakness, and then the inherent risk. So inherent risk is something, again, that is subjective depending on what your process is, but the inherent risk is the risk associated with something without any controls. The risk of the theft or the misappropriation of the cash would have a high inherent risk, because once cash is transferred from one person to another, you can't tell it from any other bill. The control risk is those risks that we have in place to try to mitigate the inherent risk. And then the combined risk is the risk that there'll be a material error even with that control in place. So for the purposes of this, I've developed a risk assessment calculator, which you can use or choose not to use. It's not something that is mandatory, but it just gives a numerical value to the high, mediums, or low. So if it's a high risk, an inherent risk, and a low risk in the control risk, meaning that there's a low chance that the control will fail, then it's categorized as a medium overall combined risk. You can do it this way, or you can just simply have it be a management decision that if this is a high risk, this is going to be a high combined risk overall. It's up to the command. Also wanted to talk about the risk and opportunity assessments. Risk and opportunity assessments are not a part of the MIC program, but they are a NAVINSGEN requirement, and I added it here because if you're looking at processes and looking at the overall risk and opportunities associated with your control environment, then this would be a good place to do it while you're already looking at risk for your areas. I have an example here of a risk and an opportunity for two different areas. On this, it's a Word document that requires you to choose a functional area, to choose a priority, and then just describe what the vulnerability area is, whether or not it's a risk or an opportunity, and then the justification for those. What would occur? What impact would it have on an organization if the opportunity or the risk was realized? And then you submit that at a later date, but around the same time frame as you would the other MIC documents. The last document that the MIC coordinators have to submit is the statement of insurance. And that statement of insurance is required annually, and it's an assessment or a kind of a compilation summary of the activities that occurred during the year. So you're looking at checklists, the internal control assessments, risk assessments, and quarterly spot checks to determine whether or not the command has reliance, reasonable assurance, or not that the controls are in place and working effectively. And you'll go ahead and document any deviations from that as far as deficiencies go. The template for the statement of assurance is located on the SharePoint site and can be which also has an example as well. The last portion of the MIC process is the certification statement. So once I get all of the statements of assurances from all the MIC coordinators, we go ahead and have a compile statement which the Chief of Staff signs that says for CNAP overall, we feel that controls are in place and work as intended, with the exception of whatever exceptions we might have. So there are statements. There is an unqualified statement in which there are no deficiencies and material weaknesses in the process. Then there are certification statements that are qualified statements, and the qualified statement says that in general we have the controls in place with some minor deficiencies, and then we have to note our plan to fix those deficiencies. And then the final type of statement is the statement of no reliance. And that's just that we have no control system in place at all, or that we might have a control system in place, but we just haven't tested it. And if we haven't tested it, then we might as well not have a control system in place at all. That's why it's important for us to use the checklist to test, that we use the quarterly spot checks to make sure the tests are done correctly, that I will review to make sure that there's a review process in place, and that we document where we have some risk and see where we have problem areas in our control system. That concludes the overview over the last few presentations of the MIC program and the control system. If there are any questions or comments, please feel free to give me a call, and don't hesitate to look on the SharePoint site for any information. This is a new process for a lot of you, and it's a different process for some of you. So please be sure to ask a lot of questions, and I will be making visits to each of the sites to answer any questions that I possibly can to ensure that you're successful at this.